Hello, hello, my beloved waking gods and goddesses. Welcome to Love, Truth, and Beauty. Maria West here. This is episode 380 and my 18th installment of my series, Conversations with Men. And today I have with me a spectacular human being, uber talented, so many facets to this young man, Brandon. Hello, love. What are you up
Hello.
to?
Welcome
We
myself.
finally do it.
I know. I've been looking forward to getting on here and talking with you. I've been following your work, especially in the past, I'd say 6-7 months, and it's just been spectacular. I've been
Thank
really
you.
loving all the episodes you've brought together.
Thank you so, so much. So, all right, the many different facets. Where do you want to start with that? Because your experience in this relatively short incarnation of yours, well, not really all that short, but you are approaching that age where this is where we get to brag about all the stuff that we've done. And you've done
Right.
many, many things. In fact, I am wearing, look at this. I'm wearing this. This came from one of your brilliant sites, which I love. So where do you want to start?
Well, I guess we can start with my background. I was raised kind of in a libertarian or anarchistic family. A lot of my family is very spiritual, very. Oh, give me 1 second. I have a person at my door. Excuse
Aha!
me.
Aha!
Okay, my apologies about that. That was my
No
egg
worries.
guy. He was delivering my eggs.
Ah, nice. Nice.
Yes. Yes, yes. Okay. All right, I'm back. I'm
All
back in
right.
action.
Yes, you're back in action.
Okay. So, yes, my background is in anarchism and libertarianism. My father was an extreme rebel. He fought against the state. Specifically, he was just an aggressive, masculine role model in my life who was just pretty much like, I want to do things my own way. I want to get away from the tyranny of the state, and I want to develop something, not only for my children, but I want to inspire other people with the cause that he was putting forward. He was a professional skateboarder. So he ended up buying property in 96, 1996. And then he created a compound called Skatopia, where we had a lot of media and a lot of, professional skateboarders that came there. We were on MTV. We had the skate park in Tony Hawk's Underground 2, which was pretty awesome. So I have a very interesting upbringing, definitely with the underground punk scene and metal scene as well. So I was raised in this very free flowing, environment where he was like, you're going to learn the lessons of nature. You get out there, do it. This is what you do. Use your willpower, get out there, be autodidactic, meaning self-learning, deconstruct things and reconstruct them, build things. Here's your tapestry, here's your canvas, build something with it,
Oh,
so that's
cool.
kind of how he was. And from that, he inspired me into reading very early on books like 1984, The Satanic Witch and Satanic Bible by Anton LaVey, Mein
Outstanding
Kampf.
books.
Right, absolutely. So I was reading these books, Animal Farm, Lord of the Rings, stuff like this, well before most people had ever heard of them, at least comparatively to nowadays, obviously. Yes. So I was raised in a very, very different way than most people were. I had access to people like Manly P. Hall's literature, so whenever I wanted, I could just go to the library and pick out crazy books and read them. And since I lived on a farm, very rural area, that's what I did. It was either playing in nature or I was just reading all the time. And I think that's what really helped me along my path, especially in my early formative years and spiritual journey, to be able to understand the world which we exist in and understand the corruption as well, which I was seeing and noticing all over the place, including in the skateboard industry and the music industry, because I was very involved, like at the high levels and the low levels, and so I always had these questions when I was a kid, like, why are these people doing these things? I was part of the counterculture movement for a time period. It's kind of funny, little side note. My dad was actually part of the fires that started at the last Woodstock that went down. He drove his van into the mosh pit when Rage Against the Machine was playing, which I was there. And so it was crazy. I have this crazy upbringing. If anybody searches Skatopia, you're going to see,
I love
it's very wild. So my upbringing really influenced me to see both sides of the picture, of how you could say occult knowledge is used for good and for ill. And even though he wasn't directly telling me that, this is what I gained from that. And I think being a positive role model like that is so important. Another side note I would say is that he took me all over the world. I was homeschooled and I went all over Europe. I got to see the Colosseum, Stonehenge, I just traveled so much, and that was so important for my early development, especially multiculturally, and to be able to socialize within this crazy world that we're living in, right? So because a lot of people say when you do homeschooling, that's one of the biggest issues you have is getting your kids to be able to socialize, right? That's usually like the mainstream complaint,
right?
It's
like the big complaint.
Which is usually not true if you're doing it properly.
Exactly. And you have this amazing father who just let it all expand in a very, very natural way. And I love that you traveled. I think that is so important to get out of your backyard, so to speak, and see how other people live, and go to other countries, learn other languages, see the artifacts, the landscapes in like real time, and immerse yourself in it. So good for you. What an amazing upbringing.
It was spectacular, and I'm very blessed to have that opportunity. The area that I was usually lived in, was always extremely poor. And so I never really meshed with the kids in my environment because my social skills and my intellectual skills and just the experiences that I had were far more advanced than most people and most of the children around me. So like a lot of us, we tend, especially if you are a being who awakened early, usually grow up really fast. Or if you're in a very traumatic environment, you tend to grow up really fast and you understand responsibilities and like things hit you hard, and you usually will identify with adults more than kids around you. That was definitely me. I was more making friends with adults and stuff like that, more so than local kids in my local area, and that's also because I traveled so much, because I was just on the road. So it's hard to create, relationships unless they're traveling with you and things like that. But my relationship with my father in the early years was amazing. And I think that's kind of what you bring to the table a lot, is positive masculine father figures, or positive masculine figures, right? And we do see an attack on masculinity in the current condition of the world. And I think it's very important that we set ourselves a high responsibility, a high bar
I
for
agree.
being positive role models, especially for progeny.
Yes. That's a great way to put it. Great way to put it. Because I know when I was coming up, the second wave feminism was already infecting just everything, the landscape. And it was really just poking at the atavistic triggers within everyone, even the men that were around when I was growing up, that men would cower. They would cower because they would buy into this very lopsided view about men and women in relationships. And especially when you have women at second wave feminism weaponizing woundology, weaponizing the so-called patriarchy, when in fact it's the complete opposite. It's the inversion, where the gynocracy has like really been in charge. So good for you. How was it though? Like interacting with people your age, do they sort of freak out because you are so different, you're outgoing, you've got, this well-rounded way about you, and being able to navigate in and out of nature with all of your travels? I'm sure the kids were like going, wow, what is this?
Well, I went to public school temporarily, and they actually
Mhm.
tried to hold me back because I was traveling so much and I missed like a few days. And they were
Oh,
like, oh, we want to hold you back a grade. And then from
wow.
there, I was just like, I'm going back to homeschool. But I still had a couple friends locally that I did hang out with. Eventually, that diminished because it just seems as though majorly the education level and the experience level are very limited for
Uh-huh.
children, especially at that time. So this is in the 90s and early
Yeah.
2000s. And, this is a lot of kids didn't even know how to work a computer in the area that I was, growing up in. And I had people all around me that were publishers, videographers, photographers, and this was really crucial to my development and my skills, right?
Yeah.
Because my stepmom was a photographer, so we were doing photos and using the black rooms and all this stuff, and I had access to a lot of different tech, which was really really crucial.
Wow.
So it was really hard for me to relate with
Hmm.
young children or children my
Yeah.
age. It's still that way today. I still find that extremely prevalent throughout my entire life, that
Hmm.
it's really hard to relate with people. It's a lot easier now because of the internet, because we find people like you. I
Yes.
find people all over the place, especially in the truth community and the One Great Work Network. There's all
Yes.
kinds of people there that I can relate with at an intimate level, and I don't need to worry about like being attacked for some
Right.
stupid reason,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a big it's a big issue for a lot of people, and that is, I feel for the children who have to go through that, because I know how hard it was
Yeah.
to like wish I had friends my age, and then all I had was like these, stinky hippie adults that were running around and, trying to fight against the system. And they were like,
Right.
peace, love, and harmony, or rebellion and burn cars and stuff, a little bit of both sides,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was like, what are you guys doing? You guys are not doing anything. That was the whole thing. It was like, what are you fucking doing? You're not
Yeah.
doing anything with what you know. You're not really fighting the
Yeah.
system. In
No.
a way, you kind of are. Like, you got your own property. You start to do a little bit
Right.
outside of
Right.
the fringe a little bit, but you're not really like educating people on the things that matter, such as natural law or
Yes.
morality,
I
you know?
agree. Yeah, that was very, very similar to the folks I was hanging around with. They just got too caught up at one point. Like I realized they just want to get stoned out. They're
Right.
just
Yeah.
owning and blissing out sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Let's just get high, let's fuck our brains out, and let's accumulate things. And we're
Yep.
not going to take care of our children. And I really took offense to that. I was like, no, no, you don't get to have kids and then get to shelve them or treat them like they are your accessories that you take off and on depending on what your mood is, what your mode is. So I get it. And yeah, thank you for that, because That is and it's an intense realization when you realize I'm surrounded by zombies here.
Right.
This is not, I'm not down with this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, chronic hedonism runs amok in the counterculture
Yeah,
movement,
it
and it always
does.
has, you know.
Yeah.
They think by, like you said, you know, getting blissed out, getting stoned, drugs, you know, sex, rock and roll, just
Mm-hmm.
music, just sing and dance your way out of
Yeah.
slavery. That's what they think. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, there are actual requirements to get ourselves out of this condition. And if we don't meet those requirements, it will never happen.
Yeah.
And
No,
yes,
it
that's
won't
great.
happen.
Like, and I'm not saying like you can't have your vices at some level. Of
Mm-hmm.
course you can.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're chronically abusing them, that's
Yeah.
the issue,
Yeah.
especially when you know that you're enslaved and then those issues fall upon the children. So if you
Yes, they
really love your
do.
children, you'll take up the sword and shield, you'll take up the microphone, you'll take up the pen, and you'll start doing something. Nowadays, take up the keyboard, right? Take up the
Yes.
mouse and the keyboard and start doing something with the knowledge that you have. And a lot of people don't want to do that because it takes responsibility and it
Yes.
takes self actualization as well. And then it takes care. It takes
Yes.
care, which our culture has
Has no concept
no
of it
concept of what
whatsoever.
care actually is.
Mm-hmm. No, it's so, so true. And then that sort of apathy where, like, as we were talking about, starting it, and once you start it, to take it all the way, there's a huge responsibility to that, and there are consequences. I know for myself, the choices that I have made to step away from the fray of this bullshit of just, I'm just going to give it a pass. I know it's bad, but I'm going to give it a pass. Oh, hell no. No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no, no, no. Because I'm not going to be party to that kind of stuff. And so I've lost family. I've lost my friends. I've lost a lot of money, people coming after me, that sort of thing. There's a cost to it, and you have to be able to, I think, being able to stand in your own sovereignty and your own autonomy, even if you're getting thrown under the bus or you realize, wait, where did everybody go? Because, being a hellraiser has its consequences. People don't want to be around that, or they want to separate themselves from that kind of thing. But that's what we need. We need
Absolutely.
hellraisers.
Right, right.
Yeah.
I completely agree. That's why I'm glad I grew up in the environment I did, because I got to experience life and the suffering that comes with doing these things. I learned from
Mm-hmm.
consequences, not only
Yeah.
of myself, but from other people as
Yes.
well. I
Yeah.
just happen to have an adept way of problem solve and observation using things like the scientific methodology or things like
Yes.
the trivium early on before I even knew what they were. I was just naturally using those. That's
Mm-hmm.
also because of good influences around me, though.
Yeah.
But yes, I learned a lot from other people and other people's mistakes. For example, if we look into the punk industry or the skateboard industry, we can see that at some level, there's a semblance of rebellion in both of these things. It's supposed
Mm-hmm.
to be, punk is supposed to be about rebelling against oppression and rebelling against
Yeah.
the authorities that be, right? And
Yeah, I
tyranny.
remember that
And
in the 70s.
yeah. And I mean, that's what all the punk was supposed to be, but it's simply a facsimile or a proxy of what it
Yes.
actually is.
Yes.
I always call
It's a
them the man.
LARP. It's a
Yeah,
LARP.
it's a LARP.
Everybody's in
It's a LARPing
costume.
thing. That's right. I call them the mannequins of freedom, is what I call
Yes.
them, because
Oh,
they're all at
it's so
shows,
good.
dressing up, looking the part, but
Mm-hmm.
not
Yeah.
doing anything. They're
Yeah.
just mannequins. They're brain dead zombies,
Yep.
you know? I think zombies are more useful than these guys, you know, honestly, tell you that. But yeah, so
I
I
love it.
started to see that in the punk movement. And I was like, what's going on? So I made a presentation about that called Fake Ass Punks, what it means to be a true rebel. And I got so much flack for that.
Yes,
I
that
have
is a
so many people.
fantastic presentation. Fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I put a lot of effort into that one. And I lost so many friends because of that in the punk industry,
Oh,
because they
well.
felt that I was attacking their culture rather than understanding that what I was trying to do was help their culture and help
Yes.
them through an act of love and try
Yes.
to get them to get their sovereignty back and to understand that joining Antifa and joining some leftist movement
Oh
or
yeah,
right
and you don't
radical
know the
movement,
difference.
yeah, yeah, you know, and they're not doing anything. They're
Yeah,
not
they're
really
not.
being anarchists. They don't
Yeah,
even understand what the etymology of the word
yeah, they don't
anarchism
even
is,
know
let
what
alone the
that means
virtue. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Wow.
absolutely. It's a personal gratification thing, which goes into what Mark Passio talks about a lot, which is de facto Satanism
Yes.
by being completely selfish.
Yeah.
You know, one of the tenets of Satanism, and this is one of the issues, is that people only truly care about themselves deep down. When it comes
Hmm.
down to it, they'll
Yeah.
do what they have to do at the expense of your liberties. And
Yes,
that's
they
what we
will.
see. Yes.
Absolutely. And go like this. I didn't do it.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, yeah.
comes a totalitarian shit show of agreement and alignment with those groups, such as Antifa. I mean, it's like, please, people.
Yeah. Yeah, they have no idea that they're actually advocating for the dark occult that rule
Yes.
this world. They
Hmm.
think they're rebelling. But this is the great thing about manipulation, is that the techniques can be used vice versa when you learn them. You can
Yes.
use these techniques against the dark occult. When you
Yes.
learn how mind control works, when you learn how controlled opposition works,
Yeah.
you can reverse this and you can be like, okay, now that I know this is taking place, now I can point it out. Now
Yes.
I can counteract this. Now I
Yeah.
become empowered because I have the knowledge about the Hegelian dialectic. Now I have the knowledge about manipulation. I
Yeah.
understand the dark triad. I understand how to deal with the shadow, you
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
and a lot of people don't want to do that. It
Well,
comes
they
down to
don't want to do
fear.
it
Yep.
because it points to the actual participation that most people do,
Yes.
either unbeknown to them or willfully ignoring the fact that what they're up to and what they're participating in and what they are turning the other cheek to is absolute fucking evil.
Absolutely. You got
And
that
they
right.
could be, and they could be actually harming their own children, and they won't look at it.
Yeah.
I have literally had to like stop myself from becoming really, really just wanting to incinerate a whole gaggle of folks talking shit as if they know what they're talking about. And me knowing you are actually harming your children. You are saying that this is okay.
Yep.
Wow. Like,
Yeah, it's horrible. It's
it is
disgusting.
horrifying. Yeah.
Yeah. It's absolutely disgusting. And we've been conditioned and what I would say epidysgenically, meaning we've been bred down. We've
Yes.
been genetically bred down to accept these
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah. And
You
we're
know?
rewarded for it. We're
Yes.
getting donuts. I
Yeah,
mean,
we're giving donuts. Oh
it's
my
just like
God.
a free
Yes, we
Happy
are.
Meal.
Get,
Wow.
get you a free Happy Meal, get your toy, get your candy. You know, you're doing good as a little slave.
Yeah.
Yep, that's for sure. That's absolutely for sure.
Ouch.
Immanuel Kant said, if the truth shall kill them, then let them die. Okay? Then let it happen. All
Mhm.
right. So just speak the truth. That's what I've always
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
I learned, I'd say Mark Passio was the biggest influence in my later years. It was interesting because I found Mark's work through my uncle, and I believe he found his work through David Whitehead.
Okay.
And yeah, and we really were, you know, we had watched Kymatica, we had went down Esoteric Agenda. We were in
Wow.
this, you know, realm really early on, watching Michael Tessarion, things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I ended up, you know, finding Mark Passio through him. And then I just resonated with his work so much because it clicked with everything that I had
Yes.
learned early on. And but it was in a tapestry that empowered me to be able to do something good.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not for everybody, but it
Yeah.
is like a very, very good tapestry, a very good
It's
platform to learn.
fantastic because he's
Yes.
foundational. He just builds and builds and builds. And when I found him through, I used to do music, singer-songwriter, and weave all of my little raging natural law, the harmonica, you name it. I was on the
Yeah.
gynocracy, I was on it. People are like, what is she talking about? And there
Burner.
was some
She's a
guy that
witch.
told me about Mark Passio and said, you two are doing similar stuff. because I would talk about my work with
Mhm.
survivors of MK Ultra and
Right.
the trafficking. And when
SRA.
I found Mark, I was like, oh my God, because I used to think I was insane because it just seemed like
Hmm.
I was the only woman in my generation and age group that was really disturbed about how the world, how the matrix was just not only getting bigger, but people, as you say, are dumbing down and accepting that sort of trickle down effect of really becoming more and more and more and more subservient
Yes.
without question. And it just seemed to me, as a child of the 60s and 70s, I'm like, what the fuck happened?
Right.
Like, what happened?
Right. Right. Yeah. At least we had some semblance of a movement back then, like if that was going on now and we had the access to the technology that we
Mm-hmm.
have now, and we had people like us speaking
That would
up
be
back then,
badass.
I guarantee the movement would have been at least somewhat on a
Yeah.
better track,
Yeah.
but we know that social engineers have engineered all kinds of rebellious
Yes.
uprisings all through history and all throughout all of humanity, right? And we see that today. You can really easily control a group, but it's really hard to control an individual.
Mm-hmm.
A group
Yeah.
is very easy to sway. You just inject a simple little micro drop of an idea into
Yep.
a group, and people will go nuts about it.
Yeah.
They'll just follow it. They'll follow themselves off of a fucking cliff like
Yep. It's
lemmings.
true. Totally true.
They totally will. It's insanity. And that's what we see happening all around us. And that's why having grassroots solutions, everybody asks, like, hey, what do we do about this? Well, the first thing is getting in touch, doing introspective work and contemplation on yourself and
Mm-hmm.
trying
Yeah.
to
Questioning
under
your thoughts.
that's right. And
Is
learning the
this my
proper
thought?
role. Yeah,
What do
yes.
I stand
Right.
for? What I
Right,
don't, what do
right.
I not stand for?
Right. Getting your moral compass in alignment, your
Mm-hmm.
conscience, and that word conscience means coming together with knowledge,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's about coming together with knowledge, the correct knowledge of right and wrong. And yeah, I mean, it's about understanding the proper role of the ego too. We
Yeah.
have to have the proper role of the ego and doing the shadow work, which I
Yeah.
know you talk about quite a
Yeah.
bit
Talk
because
about that.
trauma's
And the
hard.
first principle
Yes.
that I am just such over and over and over, and people are like, stop talking about it. No, I won't stop
Right.
talking about it.
Yeah,
You
no
know?
doubt. I wanted to bring up a little, story. When I first started doing this work, um, it was like a desert, you know, and I was so thirsty for
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
something. I needed water, right? I needed some water. I needed some good, luscious, hydration. And I could not find it anywhere. And what I mean by hydration is just somebody to interact with, somebody to
Yes.
relate with.
Yes.
Like I had this knowledge and I'm looking for this oasis out in the middle of the desert, just nowhere. And then I'd see like somebody and I'd be like, hey, maybe And then I walk up to them and it's a mirage and they don't really fucking know. And I'm grabbing it and it's a freaking cactus. And now I'm, covered in thorns because I allowed this person to come into my life. And
Mm-hmm.
then I got hurt because of it because I was delusional at that level.
Mm-hmm.
But luckily now it's almost like we're in the Amazon sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I look around, at least in our
Yeah.
little community,
Yeah.
there's a lot of people doing some stuff,
Yeah.
at least in this
Yeah.
place. And it's really nice to see that development. It's
Yeah.
not enough. I don't want
No,
to,
it isn't. It
I don't
isn't.
want
And we,
to you know, tell people it's all good and put on rose-colored glasses. It's not
yeah.
enough. We're not getting
Yeah.
through to enough people. That's for
I
sure.
agree. I agree. And one of my, and it's just a little tiny criticism. I love that we have this beautiful community. I love that. One of the things I love about our community is that we are supportive of one another. We
Mm,
share each other's work, which is just so fantastic. However, it's not going to get spread if we are constantly sitting in that safety zone of
mm,
speaking to the choir, of speaking to each other, which is great, but we each have our respective works, and that work needs to be seated at many different communities. So like we were talking earlier, I have put myself in front of audiences that have booed me, thrown rocks at me, escorted me out with security and that kind of thing. You have to do it. You've got to risk it, because if you only spark the interest of one person, that's good enough, because that is how it's going to grow. We're not going to grow if we keep speaking into an echo chamber and go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, how about the person that's going to tell you to fuck off and die, or they're going to come after you? Convincing that person, or getting them to question one iota of their mindset that's been concretized. And how has it been concretized? By trauma. So speaking to that and somehow getting things rolling. And so I encourage people to do that. It takes courage to do that. You've got to really be able to stand on your own when you don't have agreement all around you in a 360 and you're in unfriendly territory.
Yep. Absolutely.
Take the hit. Learn how to take the hit.
That's why I think adapting our content style is so important.
Yes.
Because the way that we present the information is not for every single person. And sometimes you have to learn to present these things differently so that you can get to people who will not listen to that. You know? And some people will take the hard hit. Some people love being told the hard truth right in their face, like slapping them with a wet towel in their face, and they'll learn. Those people will learn. Not everybody learns that way. Some people have been traumatized in the opposite way, where that's going to make them more apathetic. That's going to make them hate themselves more, so you have to be careful in it. And it takes wisdom to distinguish. You have to be able to psychoanalyze people quick and on the spot and be like, how can I get through to this person? That doesn't mean censor yourself. It just means understand that there's many ways to speak this information. There's many applications to present the information with.
That is a really good point. And I know that for myself, I am quite combative. I have a potty mouth. I get really irate.
I like it.
and at my age, I'm going to be 65 this year. So it's just like, holy shit. And so just a couple of weeks ago, I was on a podcast and I didn't drop one F-bomb. It was amazing to me.
Wow.
And it generated a lot of interest, because I have been criticized that, you scream at us, you yell. No one wants to get yelled at. I'm watching the chat. She's yelling at us. Oh my God, And so I've had to learn. And it's like, okay, I have to think about it as a grandmother and speaking to little children. You're not going to get anywhere screaming at them.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think about that. And I'm like going, okay, that's true. I didn't yell at my kids, that was not my style. That was the style that I got brought up with. And I ran away at 14, it's like, no, we're not doing that. So that is a really super good point. And it doesn't work for everybody,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying change your overall personality characteristic, but if you're talking to a scholar and you're talking about some super in-depth astrotheological, knowledge or occult knowledge to a scholar, they're probably not going to take you seriously if you're constantly cursing at them. They're going to look at you like an uneducated mule that's doing nothing. That isn't even good for carrying bags. Like you're just a handicapped mule is really what you are. And I mean, so I've had to learn that with my stuff because I was raised in the punk background, like I stated. So I, cursed a lot. I was harsh. I was very blunt, very frank. And that's good to be brazen in front of people. But also changing the way that you present your rhetoric is also very good. Because you have to take the work seriously. That's also something I learned. You have to care enough about what you're talking about to understand how serious it is, that how you relay that to other people, because you want them to be receptive of it. You want them to open up and And also question you. You don't want them
Mhm.
to just blindly believe you. You want them to
Yeah, yeah.
critically
I don't
think
want
and
that either.
critically feel. Right. Yeah. Don't, I always tell people, don't blindly believe me. Do your due diligence yourself, look into it, tap into your sacred intuition, feel it, know if it's actually
Yeah,
true, prove it
yeah,
to yourself through whatever means that you need. But make sure that you're not just blindly believing some other person on the internet that's telling you something, because that's
yeah,
one of the problems,
yeah,
is people just blindly believe whatever they can identify with. I'm
yeah.
not always going to be correct every sentence that
Oh,
I say
me as
or
well.
everything that I put out there. Every once in a while I have to go back and be like, yeah, I was wrong about that.
Yep,
And that's a
I
really
do the
good
same
thing.
thing. In
Yeah.
fact, I'm rewriting, I'm rewriting a third edition of my first book. And
Oh,
I'm going back and I'm like going, wow, okay, this was true 10 years ago, and here it is. Fast forward 10 years, none
yeah.
of it is fucking true.
Oh, wow.
I am not the same woman that I was 10 years ago. And, the universe made sure of that, just humbled
Right.
my ass, just,
Right.
just wiped everything out that I had built up to that point. And so then it's like, okay, that self-responsibility that you're faced with when you start noticing, oh, shit fell apart, and
Mm,
why? And guess what? I am the common denominator here.
right.
It's not
Yep.
anybody outside. It's not the trolls. It's not this. It's not that. It's that I have continued to grow and evolve.
Yep.
And I was wrong about some of my assertions and some of my conclusions. Just didn't
Right.
hold water. And I think that's part of the evolution that we go through in doing this work, is to realize that, it did not stand the test of time.
Right. Right. Yes, if it's true, it will stand the test of time. That's
Hmm.
for sure. It will be
Yeah,
universally true.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
had to say that over and over to myself, especially in my late teens to early 20s, how wrong I was about certain things. Even though, like, I know I painted a pretty decent picture of my
Hmm.
upbringing, I still had struggles. I still was enslaved as a young kid. I still was
Hmm.
traumatized and bullied. I
Yeah.
still went through all the same struggles that other kids went through, and all the same things, even rebelling against the rebellion.
Hmm.
I even considered myself at one point to be the black sheep amongst the black sheep, being a metaphor for like everybody else. Now the black sheep have a group, and now I'm like, fuck you guys, I ain't part of that. And so that's a kind of interesting thing that I always kind of observed with my upbringing, because
Yeah.
I think it's really important that people understand that we're here with them and that they're not alone. But
Hmm.
some of this journey you have to do by yourself. It takes
Yes.
solitude, it takes shadow work,
Yes.
it takes you just sitting quietly, meditating, contemplating, like you
Yeah.
said, asking yourself, are your likes even your own? Do you support your likes? Are your ideas your own?
Yeah.
Where did these
Yeah.
come from? How did they
Yeah.
influence? How did my parents influence me? How does culture influence me? I mean, you can continue to take that depending on like how deep you want to go. You can
Hmm.
go into
Hmm.
heritage, you can go into you get collective consciousness and unconsciousness. You
Yeah.
can go very deep
All
into all
all
these
of
things,
that. Yeah.
But I also try not to overwhelm people, because I know that when you're first initiated into this information, you're like a sponge and you really want
Hmm.
a lot. But if you put too much there, the sponge is like useless.
Yeah.
It can't
Yeah.
really do much. It's just leaking all this water out of the
It's
sponge,
leaking.
you know?
It
Yeah.
starts
And
to
it,
mold and mildew as
yeah, it
well.
starts to
Like that.
mold and
Like,
mildew. That's right. And so there's no practical application for them. And that's one thing that I've been trying to really formulate, is like trying to be more practical with the applications of natural law, because a lot of people ask, how can I apply this in my own life? Like,
yeah.
yes, I understand that this is a science. Yes, I understand that this is, something that I can observe myself, but how do I apply this? And it seems that a lot of people struggle and get stuck there,
Yeah.
because usually they're caught in the survival mode, right? They're caught in the rat race
Exactly.
of, fight and flight, which is trying to make ends meet,
Yeah.
living from
Yeah.
paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay your bills off and
Yeah.
stuff like
I
this,
mean,
right?
it's stacked against people.
Yes, absolutely. So I always try to empathize with people to a certain degree. But once you start to show me that you have no consideration for my liberties or fellow man's liberties, and
Yeah.
you're advocating for the state to come in and use coercive force to back your
Mm-mm.
ideas or their ideas, I'm done. I'm
Yeah.
done with it. I draw the line. That's my healthy
Yeah.
boundary, and
Yeah. Me
everybody
as
should
well.
have that. You know, do not cross that, because as soon as you're willing to violate my liberties or the liberties of the people that you love or you like or you
Mm-hmm.
associate with,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll do it to anybody.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter. You know, you don't really care. You're just putting on this mask of acting like you're a civilized person in
Yeah.
society. Yeah.
Exactly.
And you're wearing this mask out and you're like, yeah, I'm a good person. Are you really a good person? Have
Yeah.
you asked yourself that?
That
What does it mean to be a
virtue
good person?
signaling yuck.
Yeah, virtue signaling. Yuck. Yeah.
Ugh.
Oh,
Yeah.
vomit. It just
Yeah.
makes
A
me want to vomit
poseur.
with
A
it.
poseur. That's what I call them. The little poseurs.
Right,
Oh
right.
man.
Yeah, so I look like we're talking about positive role models. So I always have been like a positive role model in my life. Even before I started doing this work, my friends would come to me for, psychological help, emotional help, safety. Like they would come to
Mm-hmm.
me because my zone is always good energy. It's
Mm-hmm.
always
Yeah, mine
it has
too.
good function. Yeah, I can tell.
Good,
Like
great
this,
feng shui,
yeah, great feng
everything
shui.
is,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
purpose to it all,
Right,
and it's
absolutely.
implemented.
So I've helped friends get clean off, like heroin from great addictions because I never really went down that path of hard
Hmm.
drug
Yeah,
use.
me neither.
And yeah. And I don't know, I had a spiritual defense against that. And a little bit more to my background here is that I know that I chose to come back here because this is where I was needed.
Hmm.
I know
Yeah,
that this is a crucial time. It's
yeah.
it's an apex time for humanity.
Yes,
And
it's a
we are at the
critical
Rubicon.
lifetime,
That's
critical
right.
incarnation
That's
on
right. And there's a
purpose
lot of us
here.
here.
Yeah.
That's right. There's a lot of us here, but we're spread thin. We're spread way out and away from each other, which is good because it's decentralized, because now we can affect more areas.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
at the same time, it gets lonely. It gets
Yes.
to the point where
Very
you,
much so.
yes, absolutely. So I don't want to put on some fake mask that everything's okay, because it's not.
Yeah.
I don't
No,
like,
no, it's not.
yeah.
Where do
Yeah. And I
you
see
feel
that too much.
challenged? Where do you feel challenged in that? I know for me, I've been challenged in relationships. So being targeted by a sociopath, psychopath,
Mm,
that sort of thing, but also, letting go of my detachments to, say, my stepkids, to
ooh,
these go-to relationships where I had to cop to it. It's like, shit, these are distractions
right.
that are like, um, and they're knee-jerk distractions where I hit a wall, and because things are either too challenging or I just hit a wall with just too much messed up information where I can't take it. I need a break from the human suffering. And so
Yes.
I noticed that there were, a couple of relationships with women friends where I would just and find myself just diving into this man-hating, kind of man-blaming,
Right.
and I had to, like, whoa, I gotta pull my ass out of there. What am I doing? But it was either that or just sit around alone. And as a musician, I chose that. I'm just gonna sit around alone. I've got a
Right.
grand piano. I've got guitars, noisemakers. So
Nice.
kind of my go-to and my 300 plus plants, and I have a
Yes.
relationship. But it can be very daunting because, we just get overwhelmed with, I think, a lot of not just the details, but the responsibility and care
Mhm.
of not relinquishing the passion to distract when things get a little too much.
Right. I can relate with that. My grandmother always told me I had a bad picker because I always picked the worst women to be involved with in my life. And that's so true. It's absolutely so
Mhm.
true. And it
Yeah.
wasn't until my 30s that I started to recognize this very readily.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed right now to have a very healthy and good relationship going on.
Sweet.
And, you know, we have amazing things going on. We just got our garden put in. Like, you know, I've bought my house now. So I'm, you know, working on my house. And I think that's a really good place to start for people. You know, I don't really like Jordan Peterson a lot, but I really like what he says when he says, learn to clean your room.
Yes.
You know,
Basics.
before you go do,
Basics.
learn to make your bed.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I don't always do that. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
But it's in my mind. I know. I'm like, oh, yeah, I should make my bed. It's
the first thing I do. Make the freaking bed already.
Yeah. So, you know, you do the best you can. I'd say the struggles that I have is because I'm very empathic, that I feel the suffering going on, even with people who don't notice it themselves. You know, they're not even consciously aware of it. You know, but it's there. It's deeply seated in their subconscious. And as soon as the gate opens, you know, it's just going to flood. You know, it's like, oh man, this person is going to feel this so deeply when they recognize this. And I can already like preemptively tell, like, oh yeah, this is going to be hard for this person. So I'd say that's a challenge for me, is just being able to operate and exist within this world the way that it is, and also carry the principles that I have, because the principles have resistance in our society, in, you know, the way that government operates, because everywhere you look, it's trying to make you sacrifice principles in favor of materialism. That's what this is all about. It's a fight against materialism, you know, because they all want you to have materialism. There's a place for the material, but spiritualism has to be the foundation of that. You have to have the spirit first, and then you balance it with the material. You gain the experience with the material. And it's a feedback loop. It goes, you know, it's a cycle. It's it's the masculine and the feminine. They work together to create experience for us, you know? And I think that's one thing. I see that a lot of people are stuck in the materialistic mindset so much that it's almost like they become atheists. They completely, you know, just disconnect from who they truly are and where their power lies.
Right.
You know?
Or and they're overly identifying with the things that they have accumulated, and it's never, ever enough. You know,
right. Absolutely. No, it's never enough. They end up owning you, you know?
Yes.
That's the thing. The more and more that you have, the more and more that ends up owning you. Having material takes responsibility. You know, property is at the crux of the problem, you know, because if we can't define what property is, then we can't define what liberty is. Because individual private property is like your body, your product of labor, what you are, you know? And if you don't know what that is, then it's open for discussion for socialism, communism, cultural Marxism.
Share alike.
Share
what's
your
yours
leg
is mine.
At the demands of the government, you know? We're at the whims of the group, you know? Let's vote to cut off your leg so we can eat it without your consent.
Amazing.
You know?
Amazing.
Yeah. So if you lose your individual private property rights, then they'll take everything. You don't own anything at that level. You know, and that's what taxation is. It literally is an attack on the body. You know, it is extortion of the body, because you produce your product of labor, whatever that labor and product may be, that's with your body. You know, and if they can claim a percentage of ownership over what you make with your body, then they literally are claiming what you're doing with your body to make that. You know, so that is literally slavery. You know, taxation is just slavery. And I can't stand people who are trying to romanticize it like you have some choice in the matter, when you don't. You know, all you have is you either run and you better fucking hide, because they're going to come get your ass, or you're in this position where you have to like find ways around it. You know, you got to find ways like to get donations from people instead. So you don't have this authoritarian system down your ass because you're trying to live. You know? So, and it's very difficult. Taxation is a very, you know, that it's literally one of the hallmarks of communism. And that's what we have going on today. Marxism, straight Marxism, which is insanity.
Straight up. And it has been, they haven't hid it. It's not been hidden. They're just like in our faces with it.
They haven't hid it.
Happening. And I'm like, stop it.
Right?
Don't tell me. Please don't talk like that to me. I
Yeah, you
can't
got your
take it.
horse blinders up. What's going on here? You know,
Yeah.
you covering your eyes, the three monkeys. You see no
Hmm.
evil, speak no evil, hear no evil. You
Yeah.
know, that's
Yeah.
exactly how people are. Ignorance is not bliss.
No, it
You
is
know,
not.
ignorance is a willful, sheer willful choice to ignore present information in front of
Hmm.
you. It's
Yeah.
not nescience. You know, nescience means you can't have the information. It's like somebody who lives 5 miles from me having a heart attack. I'm nescient of that. I don't know that that's taking place, and
Yeah.
I can't help that situation.
Yeah.
But if he's in my yard and he's having a heart attack, and I decide to ignore that,
Yeah.
no, we all know what ignorance means. It means that we turn away
Yeah. We
when it's
turn
right
away.
there in front of us, you
Hmm.
know? And I think that's one of the issues with people, because everybody wants to feel good. And I understand, I empathize. I want to
Hmm.
feel good too. It's
Yeah.
nice to feel good. There's nothing wrong with feeling good
Yeah.
until it's actually hurting you, because hedonism is not a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
thing, you know? So I think
Yeah.
that's
I'm
one of,
glad I
it's a
didn't fall for that.
psychopathology. What was that?
I'm glad I didn't fall for that. Like, I don't
Right?
have an addictive personality, because I saw way
Same.
too many of my friends in the 70s and in the 80s just succumb to
Yeah.
pot, to cocaine, to
Right.
crack, to heroin. I mean, just a
Yeah.
whole, all of it, to the psychedelics. I mean,
Yes.
new age bullshit. And
Yep.
let's just do a lot of plant medicine, man, because we're,
Yeah. Yeah.
we're
They
so at
claim they're
one.
healing from it, but they're not.
No,
That's not
they're
what they're
not.
doing.
They're
Yeah.
not. They're not in a position to even be cognizant of what they're up to.
Yeah. No.
And then you're
No, no,
opening
no.
the gateways for the hellhounds to come after you
There's a
because
reason why
everything is
the
open.
authorities have used drugs throughout history
Yes.
to reign into control over the minds of men, you
Yes.
know, because they are
Absolutely correct.
dualistic. Drugs are dualistic. They can be used positively, they can be used negatively,
Hmm.
you know, and you have to be very careful, very, very careful. And a lot of the drugs that are out there now are created by the state, by the pharmaceutical industry,
Yep.
you know, by the petroleum industry is really what it is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and they're not healthy for you. SSRIs, you know, oh
Yeah.
my God, that's insanity. You
Yeah.
know, I've watched people go insane because of things like that.
Hmm.
It's insanity, you know. And yeah, I'm very lucky and very blessed that I didn't have an addictive personality. My grandmother was a positive influence on me because she has dealt with a lot of addiction, from alcoholism to people, from people around her, her mates,
Hmm.
and things like this.
Hmm.
And she just taught me a lot about that. And she also influenced me into the Eastern traditions a lot very early on. Buddhism, you know, Hinduism, stuff like that,
Sweet.
giving me books like The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, you know, Wayne Dyer, stuff like that when I was younger. So, you know, that's why, you know, I started pretty early on with this. It wasn't with the big heads like Tessarion and you know and Mark and stuff like that. But I started pretty early on in the aftermath of a lot of that coming out.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's why a lot of my work resonates with a lot of people, because I have a lot of knowledge, especially in the occult realm.
Yeah.
That's where my particular studies are in esoteric totemic sociology and just occultism in general,
Yeah.
you know, because I do know that as long as we do not understand the occult, we will continue to be enslaved. That is the truth, you
Yes.
know, because I mean, really, when you break it down, the occult just simply means hidden knowledge.
Yeah.
That's it. It's a
Yeah.
science, you know, it's about the hidden laws of the universe and the way that we work in the psyche,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
major arcana and the minor arcana. That's what it's all about. And this is what the dark, you know, psychologists and the dark sorcerers and dark occultists of this world, they have this knowledge and they don't want you to know
Yep.
that.
They
They
want
don't
us
want you.
willfully ignorant of it, or just
That's right.
not even aware
That's
of it.
right. Yep.
And that way we can self occult. We
Right.
won't know ourselves.
That's an
We won't even
interesting
have the
term.
curiosity to like look and scratch beneath the surface.
That's
And
right.
I know for myself as a little girl, I was very, very aware something was off, something was off. I remember sitting at the dinner table and just kind of observing what was going on. I had to be 1.5, maybe 2 years old, and thinking, these people do not know what is happening beyond what they can see. And I weren't seeing
Right.
very much,
Right.
just the whole
Yep.
thing of being glued to the boob tube back in the, the early
Yep.
60s. And what was my answer to watching all these people get upset or entrained? I just went behind the TV and I pulled the plug,
Right.
just unplugged it from the electrical source and, to see what would happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just got
There
into
you go.
trouble. That was it.
Yeah, of course you get in trouble for it. Yeah. Something that I talked about in my last presentation is that the universe has inherent properties of occultism at its roots.
Yeah.
The curiosity, the awe in the
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
that wonder, that's part of the process of unveiling or
Right.
de-occulting the mysteries of the universe.
Yes.
There's a reason why the universe has hidden these things in the invisible workings.
Yeah.
These laws are invisible. It's because it helps us to evolve, and it gets us to stimulate new areas of our neocortex that we have not stimulated before.
Yeah.
We want to have higher level thinking. We want to have the falcon, we want to raise the serpent, the kundalini energy with the falcon energy. We want to raise that with the wings and spread wide.
Beautiful.
And
Beautiful.
spread that across the higher planes, and yeah, I mean, I love it because whenever I see kids running around, like looking at the grass and like turning over rocks, I'm like, this kid is an occultist. Like he's looking, that's what he's doing.
Looking beyond
nature.
And what's
That's
funny
right.
is that when I think about it, I remember as a child being told there were only 5 senses. And I'm thinking, no, there aren't. There's more. There's more. And there's a reason why a lot of this is occulted. There's a reason why in the Matrix there's only 5 senses, and
Right.
our third eye, our sixth sense is completely, and scientism is going to say there's no such thing. And then, of course, our seventh sense of generosity and care, I mean, that just gets completely obliterated. And what it does, it limits us to what the tiny sliver of the universe, the 3 to 4% that we only have access to, and the rest of it is irrelevant. Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. And
That's
this is the curiosity, to ask the questions and turn over that rock and not be afraid that there might be a snake in it or a bug that might bite. I remember one of my stepkids goes, there was one of these bugs. It's one of these bugs it doesn't really pee on you, but it just emits a fluid that is really kind of, it's a vinegaroon, basically. Don't touch it, Mom. It'll pee on you. And I knew what it was. And I'm like, it's a vinegaroon. It's just going to squirt this little, kind of acidy kind of thing. And we had these as pets. I mean, it was just like fascinating. But the curiosity of it, like, all right, Liam, how do you know? How do you know what because it peed on me, So the consequence of your curiosity, it's not all that bad. I mean, sometimes.
Yeah. Well, that's just part of living in reality. We're not trying to live puritanically. That's for sure. But what we are trying to do is reduce unnecessary chaos. Unnecessary chaos is things like, coercion and enshrining things like moral relativity as a basis for a system of justice. There is no system of justice if you can arbitrate it at the whims of your own perception rather than studying the science of the consequences of your behaviors. You can't do that. That's what man's law is. All man's law really is man trying to play God. That's it. He's trying to arbitrate that he is the lawmaker here, and he gets to say what is right and wrong. That's what it's always been, and that's kind of the idea of religion too, because it's like, who gets to be the priest of God, right? Who gets to be the deputies of God, really? Who gets to be the divine authority that's been appointed by a God, whatever religion you come from, to rule over other men, right? That's what that is. So it's all mind control. It's always been mind control. It's always been about control.
never ever appealed to me. It was always very
Right.
clear,
Yeah.
just even the whole prayer mode of like,
Right.
I always felt like I'm just giving it up. I'm just giving up to this thing, I don't quite agree with it. No, I'm not down with it, And when you consider what the churches are, you see the steeples. Like when I was living in Texas, I mean, it was like one steeple higher and higher and higher. And I would think about all the people in worship, in prayer position, and the gods or goddesses just accessing that portal and just, I mean, talk about vampirism. Let's
Right. Right.
give up. We'll just give all this up. And we're
Yep.
gonna also tithe. So we're gonna give up money as well.
Yep.
It always just seems so dirty
Mammon.
to me.
Yep.
Totally dirty.
Yeah, you
Let's
can't
talk
serve two
about your
gods.
project.
Oh, okay.
Because that's what you're doing. You're de-occulting. I mean, it's part of your moniker here on the Zoom. And
Yes.
yes, and I'm excited. I just saw your teaser trailer for your new series. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Yeah. I presented a presentation last year at Seed 5 Metamorphosis. It was called Beyond the Forbidden Veil. And I had planned on extending that because I had left out about 3 hours of it. And when I went in and started working on it, this is how the process of refining goes. It tends to be this way, as an alchemist, you're trying to refine and get to the purest thing that you can present to people, right? And I just wasn't satisfied with it being a presentation because it kept extending and extending, and then it became and developed and naturally, organically transformed into this beautiful series. And I was like, okay, there's no other way for me to do this because it's going to be so long. It's so in depth than to do it episodically. Because I know how my work is. I'm very detail oriented, and I like to give as much as I can. And I want to make sure that I don't fail myself, first of all, but also my service is the truth. So I want to make sure that I can lay it out as a good tapestry for anybody to go to and be like, okay, I can just go here and find this information very easy on. So I'm very excited about it. It's called Beyond the Forbidden Veil, a series on the occult. It will be episodic. My planned due date for the first episode will be in 2 weeks from this Monday. And I'm very excited. I've been working on it behind the scenes for a while. It's going to be a new style. Most of my work is either podcasts or been doing, presentation style for a lot longer than that. So this is going to be more of a video presentation style, I suppose. It's going to be mixing presentation work with actual footage, and so it's going to be kind of a little bit more digestible for people and a little bit more fun for me to edit and stuff like that without losing the integrity of the quality of the information, which is the most important part of it, obviously. But I'm trying to be more creative because I think creativity gets stifled when we start to get in patterns of, repetition of certain types of content, right? Which is great. But I've been doing this for a long, long time. And I know that I want to expand my horizons with how I can be creative with producing content. And that's what I've been trying to do with the conference by doing it online and things like that, which, we will be, early note to this, there will be a Seed 6 coming next year, the spring of next year. Very excited about that. And then I'm going to take a break on the conferences after the 7th one, which I'm hoping that one will be in person. And then a little bit more of my work, I guess. I'm working on an anarchist history book.
Love it.
I have 3 more chapters to do on that. Been working on that for quite some time now. And that should be out, I'm hoping, by the end of this year. So those are my 2 big projects, 3 big projects: the conference, obviously, which is I always do, and then the new series, and then my anarchist book. So I talk about anarchy quite a bit. I'm sure you know that. I've done a lot of episodes with James Cordner. I've done some with Francisco. Yeah, I love James. He's such a great guy. I've done some with Sean McCann and on the history of anarchism. And I think it's really important that we understand the history, because if we don't understand the history, then we don't understand why it is the way it is today.
Or you will repeat it.
That's right. That's absolutely right. You
Hmm.
know, and so for example, a lot of people tie anarchism with terrorism. Well, there's a reason for that, even though that's not what it is,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
there's a reason for that. The first time that anarchism was ever deemed terrorism was because at one point the anarchists rose up and started to fight against the authoritarians because they were slaughtering the
Hmm.
protesters. For example, at the May ritual, the May Fair ritual.
Hmm.
And yeah, there's just so many different examples of this throughout history. And
Yeah.
yeah,
And then
it's just
it
really
gets
interesting.
convoluted,
Yes.
distorted.
Yes, yes. And it gets blamed on the anarchists
Hmm.
because they happen to stand up and enact self-defense, rightful self-defense,
Hmm.
you know. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. So be looking forward to checking that out, you know.
Sounds
Should be
exciting.
pretty good. Sorry,
Sounds exciting.
I'm eating raw organic ginger.
Nice.
So good for you. And I
Yeah,
eat it all the time. I caught
that's good for you.
I yes, so good for you. I caught Lyme disease back in like 2015, and one of the main remedies that I found is just like raw organic ginger for it.
Okay,
And ever
cool.
since then, I've been, you know, using that just as a tip for anybody that may have struggled with that. I struggled with it for a long time. I say the
Hmm.
two biggest things that helped me was just proper diet, you know, really good diet, and then also a therapy called molecular hydrogen therapy. It's
What does that entail? I think I've heard of it, but maybe not.
molecular hydrogen therapy is a very interesting science out there right now that's starting to gain more momentum and traction. They use it clinically in Japan. They use it
Hmm.
all over the place clinically, not in the West yet. I think Sweden uses it as well. But what it is for me, I have an inhalation machine, so I just breathe it in for about an hour. I set the amount that I want for that hour, and then also you can take it, you can consume it through water.
Okay.
So you carbonate your water. You just put like a little, what are they called? A little stone that you drop in the water and it bubbles up. You know,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
can't remember what it's called. But you do that and then you drink the water. And another way you can do it is by bathing in it. So you can like soak yourself in it. And
Oh.
what it's shown is it reduces inflammation. The so it's H2, it's not H2O, the
Hmm.
molecule, and it's the smallest molecule known to man. So it can penetrate things like the blood brain barrier. It can get deep into the nucleus. And what it does is it's kind of like an executive commander for your cells and systems of cells. So what it does is it will tell things like free radicals to destroy themselves, and it will tell your cells to like rejuvenate themselves. And I always call it just like it's Super Saiyan mode for your cells, pretty much. You know,
Wow.
that's what I call it.
How
And
cool.
yeah, it's really cool. And it's non-toxic. So you can actually like consume as much as you want of this. And they've done
Hmm.
like a lot of peer-reviewed studies on this. And I know we're you know, very majorly against a lot of the scientific community. Some of
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. Some
But
of
they've
it is
done a lot.
good.
Yeah, some of it is. Scientism is not, you know.
No.
But there's a lot of really good science that has come out about this. And it has shown tremendous benefits for people with things like lupus, you know, people with skin disorders from cancer to,
Hmm.
you know, just eczema, things like that. You know, the Japanese use it not only for heart issues and stuff like that, but they use it for youthfulness. So it's an organic compound, obviously. And yeah, you just breathe it in, you know, and or and drink it, you know, but you got to make
Wow.
sure you're doing the right dosage or you're not going to get the effect,
Hmm.
obviously.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
had mine set at maximum, so I just freaking dose myself with it, you
Hmm.
know, as much as possible, and it's helped so much. So,
How long did you do this before you noticed something significant?
I think it was about 3 to 4 weeks because
Okay.
it is an accumulative
Hmm.
effect. It builds
Right.
up in your system.
Okay.
And then after that, I started noticing a dramatic change in my symptoms. You know, my symptoms just kind of like dropped off like steadily. And
Wow.
yeah, it was pretty dramatic and pretty radical. It's insane because I was bedridden like for a couple years there. I couldn't even get out of bed to do anything.
Wow.
You know, I
Wow.
just lived with my two huskies, and my grandmother was helping me. I couldn't work, couldn't do anything. And then, you know, after rigorous, you know, searching for solutions from naturopathic doctors to even mainstream doctors, finally, I just eventually became my own doctor and started, doing stuff myself, and
Yeah.
then started finding way, way better solutions than anybody actually gave me. And then I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Logan. I believe it was Logan Hart who told me about it.
Hi, Logan.
Yeah, I love Logan. And
I
then I
do
bought myself
too.
a machine, and
Mhm.
from there, my symptoms, dramatically reduced after that. So,
Wow.
yeah,
That is pretty cool. That because I know a bunch of people who suffer with Lyme, and I mean, it's so debilitating,
it
and then
is.
it can go into remission and then come back like
Yes. That's what happened to me a
rager.
couple times. A couple times that happened to me. Yep.
Hmm.
I read every book I could get a hold of. I talked to Lyme specialists. I talked to infectious disease doctors,
Hmm.
all over the place. And, I mean, some of them had good advice. Some of the naturopathic doctors had some really good advice for
Hmm.
dieting and stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say that was the major change, is being able to do that. And it's really nice because I work, from home. So I do a lot of computer work, and I can just sit at my computer, put the thing
And do
on,
your
but
thing.
yeah, do my thing, and
Yeah,
it's really, really nice.
the healing
Just to be able
session.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I
And
highly recommend that.
this is a tribute to you, like as you mentioned, becoming your own doctor, becoming your own authority about what works for your body,
Yes.
what is the best course of definitive action that's not toxic. I mean, you had your parameters. I mean, that is cool, because most people are just gonna go to the sort of consensus
Hmm.
protocol, and so much of it is so toxic and
Yes.
so ineffective. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a very independent individual, so I don't like relying upon a lot of other people unless I absolutely have to. I have no issue asking for help.
Mhm, mhm.
Luckily, I do ask for help when needed, but for the most part, I can usually try to like get it done myself. And that's what I've noticed with people, is that they have this authoritarian mind virus in their mind, where they have to get somebody else to tell them,
Yeah,
like,
some
hey, to do this,
authority.
some authority. It's like the
Mhm.
Milgram experiment. They have this. I think it's one of the most prevalent psychopathologies that's ever existed, is
I
the belief in
agree,
authority. you know
1000%.
yes, and it's the most dangerous too. It's absolutely the most
Yeah,
dangerous,
yeah,
because it's blind belief. You'll
yes,
follow anything they say,
yeah,
you'll
yeah,
do it. You literally are just a lab rat for them. You're doing the studies for them.
mhm,
They're experimenting on you, and they're gathering all the data. They're
yeah,
the white
exactly.
priest class. They're the white priest class. So
Yeah, I
it's
agree.
it's yeah, it's very disturbing, and that's
Mhm,
something that we all do suffer from.
mhm,
We have all kinds of toxins in our air. We have toxins in our food, especially here in the
mhm.
West. I mean, if you
Yeah,
just look at the different things that the East have compared to the West when it comes to food, it's insane.
yeah,
Like, even at the fast food restaurants, they're dramatically different. There's no additives. They keep a lot of preservatives away. It's insanity the way that the way that we eat food.
yeah.
And
Some of
we
the
allow that.
ingredients
So,
are just not allowed. They just won't
yeah,
even have them.
yep,
They're
yep,
banned completely.
completely banned. Yep. Yep. And I think it's crucial to take your initiative to understand what you're putting into your body, not just mentally, but also emotionally and
Mhm,
physically,
mhm.
with what you're putting into your gut. Because if your gut isn't healthy, then your brain's not going to work completely properly, because
Yeah,
it's the
yeah.
mind, heart, gut system for a reason. There's the Trinity,
Yes,
and you have to
yes,
have this in alignment, and you want your gut biome to be extremely healthy. And there are
absolutely.
remedies out there. There's a
Mhm.
lot of stuff. Mushrooms are really good. Mushrooms are really great for the gut, specific ones. I
I
love
learned a
mushrooms.
lot
So,
about a lot of mushrooms when I was getting to know my Finnish grandmother, who was part of the Karelian shamanistic uh, lineage there. And it
wow.
was just so fascinating because here we are in Karelia, which is about It's about 250 to 300 miles north of Helsinki along the Russian border. And it is like literally everywhere you look, just nothing but forests, birch trees, pine trees,
Right.
all this. I mean, just all this fairy goodness. I used to pretend I was a fairy in Berkeley, California, but so, just learning about the mushrooms and foraging and the way to dig them out of the ground and escorting them. I
Right.
mean, just having that respect for the plant, for its intelligence. And each one of these, I learned that they have these amazing medicinal effects for like headaches, for digestion, for increased psychic activity. I mean, they were just so tuned into this. Beautiful plants, a lot of
Yes.
them growing on the side of birch
Right.
trees. I mean, beautiful, beautiful.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
Yes, you also got to know your stuff too. You don't want to just go,
Oh, yeah.
foraging
Yeah,
and just eat
because
some
some
random
of it
stuff
will
because
kill
there's,
you.
yeah, you got to be careful out there. But luckily we have the internet now, and you can take pictures with your phone, you can search that. I
Yeah.
mean, you can get some pretty decent information out there. And that's why it's disappointing to see, like, because people have access to one of the most powerful devices, the most powerful communication
Yeah.
libraries in the entire world that we've ever had, and
Yeah.
people literally use it to watch TikTok all day.
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing? And people
Yeah.
allow their kids to do this.
Yeah.
And
I
I'm like, what are
am
you
not
doing?
on any of that. No
No,
way.
what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
teach them something. Teach them something about nature.
Mhm.
They can name the pop singers that's coming up, but they can't name the plants in their backyard anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
That's sad. That is very,
yeah, and
very sad.
nature is the solution. It
I
really is.
agree.
That's what we have to get back in tune with, and that includes us, because
Yeah.
there's this separatist idea that we're not part of nature,
Oh,
and
we
we are.
are. We are.
Yes,
We are an
that's right.
integral part of nature.
That's right.
The body politic, the mind politic, it's all nature.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
we're mind controlled to believe that it's separated, and it's not separated at all.
Yeah, and we are also conditioned to believe that we do not have a responsibility to steward nature.
Mhm.
And stewardship is something that I talk a lot about, specifically because the ancient tribes, the indigenous tribes, totemic tribes, they all understood a respect, a sacredness for nature, and they revered it as a spiritual thing. It was all spirit.
Mhm.
The leaf had spirit. The tree has spirit. The grass has spirit.
Mhm.
Everything, the
Yes.
dirt, the dust, it all
Yeah.
has spirit.
Yeah.
It's all a manifestation of spirit. And this is something that I find too, is that a lot of people see that a lot of tribes would worship certain animals, but they fail to understand that what they were really worshiping was the spirit. It's not really the animal itself. It's not the
Yeah.
zoo type of the
Yeah.
animal. They're worshiping the spirit of
Yeah.
that thing. They're
It's
venerating
essence.
that. Yeah, it's
Yes.
essence, because there's a
Mm.
connection between all of us with spirit, you
Mhm.
know. And I think that's very important to recognize, is that we
Yeah.
have a responsibility to the environment, because
I
we
agree.
are creating the environment.
Mhm.
It goes back to the first hermetic principle. It's mentalism. For it to be created, it must be in the mind first.
Yes. It
And if
begins
we
there.
yeah, it begins in the mind. And nothing that man has ever made did not begin in the mind first. You
Mhm.
know, even an
Yeah.
unconsciousness,
Yeah.
that plays a big part of it too, because we unconsciously create things. And the more conscious we of our subconscious programs and all this stuff, then we can more consciously create a better environment for ourselves. I don't believe in utopia. I think it's an illusion.
I
Always
do
have.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's stupid. There's never
Yeah.
going to be a place where there is no conflict at some minute
Yes. No,
level.
it's
Yeah.
chasing. It's like chasing an orgasm.
Yeah,
It's like,
right.
come
Right,
on,
right.
kids. Stop
Right,
it.
right. Yeah,
Stop
it's
it.
just chasing an
You are
orgasm. Oh my
co-creating
God.
that.
You're
Yeah.
great. I love your personality. You have a great personality. I knew
I
it when
try
I
to
first started
make
talking
fun
to
of
you.
stuff because
Yeah.
I used to be so serious. Like
Right.
I was just bent bent around just the horror and the atrocities and the suffering I was witnessing and feeling deeply within, just being of that feminine nature and the receptive principle, I would just be overwhelmed. And, the sort of sarcasm and humor, but always bringing it back and endeavoring to point to a solution.
Right.
Point
Absolutely.
to a possibility, the possibility of transcending or of evolving or turning it around. They want to
Right.
invert it on us. How about we invert it on them?
Right.
Them.
Right. You reminded me of something that I spoke on briefly in some other podcasts, which was invoking the child spirit. I think the child spirit is so important
Yes.
because it's interesting because you have this archetype of like Gandalf, the wise wizard, right?
Yeah.
And he's the mad scientist, or he's the mad guy out in the woods, the mad hippie or whatever. He's crazy,
talking to himself and
talking
forgetting
to
things.
himself, and he has all this great wisdom and stuff. When he's headed toward the next reincarnation or the afterlife or whatever you believe in, right? He's headed out of this realm, right? And then the children, they just came from that. They were just birthed into this realm. And those two things, those are the two pillars, right? And this is why the ancients often had the elders take care of the children, and then the adults took care of the political affairs. Okay, so in a lot of tribes, that's how it happened. So you would go to the wise elder, they would take care of the kids because they have all the wisdom, right?
Yeah.
But they're also goofy, they're lighthearted because they understand that child spirit and invoking that child spirit. And that child spirit comes with curiosity, playfulness, genuinity. There's a lot of things. Innocence, this awe about everything, the beauty of nature, the beauty of being able to be alive and stuff like this, and it's the almost, I wouldn't call it careless, but it is kind of in a way just free flowing, right? Like a child is just free flowing. Right? I don't like using the word careless for that. So free flowing is a better word for that, right?
Carefree.
The
other thing too, and I've had conversations with little kids who remember their previous incarnation.
Right.
And we'll actually talk about to great detail what happened and why they're back, only for them to forget, like by the time they're 14, 15, 16, they're so inundated by pop culture's programming and all the distortions, they don't remember the conversations they had with me, which is bizarre to me.
That is bizarre.
Yeah. So
we
I wanted to bring that up because
memories.
because that just came up recently, and it came up recently again with a client student of mine who's now in her 30s, who actually did my practitioner training when she was 12 or 13 with her mom.
Wow.
And now is this PhD Stanford mathematician, and completely like that's all wiped out.
Wow.
It's very, very, very sad. And she's having this sort of cathartic identity crisis here and it's very, very clear that the direction that she went in was in the complete opposite direction of her true spiritual nature.
Right.
And she's fighting to get it back. And, I'm pretty confident that she will get it back, because it's not like she lost it. I think it's just that all this other matrix stuff gets in the way. It takes first position in terms of, inheriting whatever from you. We're just going to take all that from you rather than you coming back to yourself. We're just going to get in the way of that, So,
just dormant. It's never really gone. You just have to become aware of it and then actualize it, right? You have to invoke it and manifest that.
Yeah.
So it's a struggle. I always tell people, nobody said it's going to be easy, but I'll tell you what, you're going to have fun along the ride. it's going to be a fun ride. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're going to like it, sometimes you're not, but
Yeah.
it's
Some
going to
of
be
it is
fun.
going to suck.
Yeah, you're going to look back and be like, wow, one of my mottos is surf the chaos, learning to surf
Well
the
done.
chaos.
Yeah.
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 And I think that's a really great way of like looking at it, because then not only can you like gain skills, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we are living in a very chaotic world. You gain
Mm-hmm.
skills from this, which is so important.
Yes.
Skills are so vital for you to be able to exist in the physical incarnation.
Absolutely.
Yes, it's so
And the
important.
principles, the Hermetic principles, are
Yes,
really, along with natural law, these are critical in terms of navigating the surfing,
that's right.
the sort of
Absolutely.
transurfing reality and knowing
Right.
how reality works and
Right.
how it will work against you if you're not on it. And you
That's right. It
don't
will.
bust the move to think properly and apply each one of the principles, and I
Yep.
know people who work with me, they either work with me and they're in for the long haul, or they just tell me to F off because they don't want, well, the personal responsibility in, I mean, the very first principle,
Yep.
you know, the all is mind. What does that mean? It means that aggregate reality that you are so hypnotized by, you are the
Yes.
common denominator and you can change it. But you have to learn how to think properly in order
Yes.
to apply, and then the correspondence, as above, so below. What's out there? Guess what? You
Yep. That is right. Yeah, if you don't find the hidden treasures within yourself, then neither will you find it in the external.
Mhm.
You have to find the hidden treasure. I mean, there's a reason why we call the chest, right? Because it's a treasure chest. And
Yeah,
if you can unlock that, if you have the keys to that heart-based consciousness,
yeah,
then you will flourish,
yeah.
you will become empowered. And for me, it was because of some great people around me that kind of like kicked me in the ass and was like, hey, you know a lot. What are you doing with that? Why aren't you doing something? You teach me so much all the time. You could
Mhm.
be talking on a podcast or doing a radio show or something like this. Like, what are you doing with that?
Mhm.
And that's really like those statements always stuck with me from a few of
Yeah,
my friends. Like,
yeah.
hey, you should be doing something. And that's what kind of allowed me to introspect and then self-actualize. Along with Mark Passio's work, like I was saying earlier, he
Mhm.
really laid out the foundation for being able to really
Yeah.
springboard and jump
Yes.
out into the media.
Yes.
Because I had a lot of skills in publishing, dealing with videography. I always dealt with Photoshop when I was younger. I loved doing art. I was an artsy kid. I like music and art. Those were my two things. I love to build stuff and I love to do it digitally and physically. I used to build sculptures. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I just took all those skills and developed them
Yeah.
more and
Yeah.
applied them. It's
Yeah.
not as hard as what people think it is. Once you get in there and you start to like do it, that's
Yeah.
all you really got to do.
It's
Yeah.
part of your nature to do it. So
Yes.
it's a full expression of your essence in
Yes.
more ways than one. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
And you had mentioned something earlier that I thought I'd circle back around to, which is like you have some good hobbies. You have musical instruments around you,
Yeah.
you have your
Yeah.
plants. I think hobbies are so important for
Yeah.
people. And I think that helps me to overcome the challenges is
Yes.
having a healthy basis of hobbies. Music
hmm
is one of my passions. I love playing guitar. I love
Yeah.
playing piano.
Yeah.
You said you had a baby grand. That's
Yep.
amazing. I'm very
I
jealous of
love it.
that.
And I did it for a living. I did it for a living. I got to
Wow.
travel the world playing at military bases. I mean,
Wow.
how
That's
weird is
quite an
that?
experience.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. And
crazy.
my
Look at you
partner,
now.
my partner and I were in Turkey at the same time. I
Wow.
performed at the exact same Air Force base that he was stationed in back during that time. And we
Wow.
just kept missing each other, which is
Right.
interesting. And then, you know, I get deported because of the COVID, and I'm back in America. And I
Right.
meet him within 12 hours of landing back
Wow.
home. I mean, you can't make it up because, as Sethicus would say, my code lines were like calling me back
Yes.
to
That's
do the
right.
grid work here. And
That's right.
yeah,
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 that's powerful synchronicity there.
Very, very
very
powerful,
powerful.
and that is the thing, is to, not see everything as a shit show.
Yes.
To see the advantage in reality transurfing, there's the strategy of advantage, even in a shit show. What is the advantage here? And like I said, you invert it. It's like, okay, this doesn't look so good. Let's see what we can do to turn this around.
Right.
Flip it.
Yep.
And
I call that solution think.
Yeah.
I think it's solution think. You're being realistic, but also you're not losing your motivation of like, hey, I want to do something about this. I can turn this into an opportunity. I can turn this into an advantage for, my well-being or other people's well-being at some level. And that's so important, because when we get caught in the negative thinking too much and you dwell on it too much, it stifles your ability to actually do anything. It contracts your consciousness. It constricts your consciousness is what I mean to say,
And it puts you in that victim mode, that victim mentality, that that place where you are absolutely just disempowered.
Yes.
Because of the dwelling and the sort of repetitive. I mean, you're not owning your thoughts at that point. You are completely hijacked by a mindset that may or may not be true. And you have a choice. You do. You have a choice to go there or not go there. Go somewhere else.
That's right. Yes, I think it's important also to realize that usually there's a thought preceding our emotions. And most people are not aware of that because it comes so quick, and we don't realize that there's actually like something creating that, and when you get into that, that is the principle of mentalism. When you start to become self-aware of, the things that are creating the way that you feel, the things that are creating the way that you express yourself, and then through that, you can gain self-mastery, which is one of the most important things. That's what the occultists are all about. It's all about getting in touch with your divine power, getting in touch with your personal sovereignty, and becoming a master of yourself, and not allowing other people to dictate how you feel, how you think, how you act, which is very important. So I think it's really, really important. And there are many methods. There are many, many, many methods, because it's a spiral journey. It's a spiral ritual. That's what it is.
It really is.
Ritual.
And so that journey, I mean, just sharing this very humbling journey of this book that I started writing 20 years ago. And here it is, 10 years, 20 years later. It's like, shit. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to I got to come clean on this.
Right. That's impressive. That's very impressive.
Oh,
a lot of people wouldn't do that.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of it, doing it little by little by little by little, because it's one of those things where you realize, wow, the influences of a certain time can it can waylay you, and it can like catapult you forward. It's done that. It's catapulted me forward, and then has yanked the rug out from under me. Because I think I always had this assumption that I would get to a certain point and it would just like level off. And no, there's this continual evolution up the spiral staircase, so to speak, that really is poking at you. Question your reality and question your conclusions.
That's right. I agree. I think that's important. And when I was talking about the spiral ritual, like if you break down spiritual, right, it's spire ritual. That's where we get that from. It's both words combined, spiritual, because the journey is not just a linear line, right? It is a curve, and it's very important to understand that you don't always see where you're going either, like a spiral staircase. You don't always see the destination, but you have to trust in yourself, and you have to trust in your ability to handle what is coming, and I think preparedness is really good to have as well. I think being aware and being prepared is so important.
Say more about the preparedness. Like, I mean, I know as a woman, there are certain things as a woman that, and I can't even name them right now, but it's kind of a thought ball. When I am preparing for something, there are there 4 steps. I'm just going to say 4 steps, and it's a thought ball. What is your version of preparedness?
I would say that depends on like what scale that you mean.
Okay.
So if I'm talking about like preparedness, I would say the one thing that I always came back to is it's better to be prepared than to not be when you need it, right? So I always try to do the best to not overwhelm myself with thinking too far into the future about potential risk, first of
Okay.
all, right? That's one thing. Because then you'll stifle yourself because we lack in resources and things like that because you can over prepare obviously. So there's a lot of hoarders out there that are they're really into like getting everything ready for the societal collapse and stuff like
Yes,
that, and it consumes their
I've
lives.
been there.
Yeah, and it consumes your life. So I wouldn't take it that far. I think there's a
Yeah.
balance that must be struck where it's like it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about like societal collapse, well, I really hope that that's not the case, but it might be good to invest in some firearms, maybe some seeds, and store them properly. Anything that you
Yeah.
can with what resources you have.
Gardening
I think,
skills.
yeah, I was about to say skills. Skills are so important for preparedness, like these skills that can be utilized in different situations. And I also think that being prepared is also about visualizing certain situations in your mind's eye and
Yes.
then realizing the way that you will behave in those situations,
Yes.
right? So
Yeah.
it's not just preparedness for some apocalypse or something
Yeah.
like this. It's preparedness for how you deal with people. It's preparedness for how you deal with your own internal,
Yeah.
influxes of emotions and
Yeah.
psychology. It's preparedness for events and situations that may occur as you start to do different things in reality. So it's not like when you hear preparedness, it's always like, oh, doom and gloom, like everything's going to
Yeah.
fall
Yeah.
apart. Well,
Prepper. My
yeah, the
prepper
preppers.
days.
Yeah. And
They
that's
really
fine,
sucked, by
but
the way.
I like preparedness and the mental level so that I know like if this situation occurs in my head, how am I going to behave?
Yes.
Right. And I think that's really important. So like when I'm dealing with other people, I'll try to imagine how that will play out and how I will react, because I think preemptively thinking about those things will help you navigate it when it comes up rather than just impulsively doing something.
Yes.
Having the explosion of impulse and feeling like you have no time to make a choice. So you just
Right. It's a
erratically do
knee
something.
jerk. You are at the
Yes.
effect of the outer reality, and you have no agency within yourself to
Right.
even ascertain what is real, what's actual, and what is a knee-jerk reaction.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And a lot of people are not conscious of that in any way, shape, or form. Preparedness too, like whenever you go to build something, right? Understand that you're going to need to have like the requirements met to be able to build that thing. You're going to need certain tools for that. You're going to need certain resources for that, right? So like I said, it's just all about like what you're talking about when you're talking about being prepared.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really important to understand that there are requirements in this world. And if we don't meet those requirements, then we cannot change or we cannot do different things here. Right.
Yeah. My thought processes are, I like to pre-pave reality.
Right.
That's how I operate, in terms of the outcome. Living in the final outcome is one way that I do things, and that seems to work for me as a thought ball, because all the integral steps, the pre-steps, and also the steps of action that I need to take, they're already embedded in there. And I think that's kind of like my own practice of form fitting my my way of implementing things to match my outcome that I'm envisioning, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It's funny because it kind of brings up an idea like whenever you're dealing with somebody and they're very anxious about something, or they're like, you can tell they're in distress about something, maybe like a
Mm-hmm.
job,
Mm-hmm.
and they have to change a job or something like this. And then you're like, oh, well, you probably already know the solution to that, right? Like you probably do. I don't need to like repetitively like hammer it into you. You probably already got the solution in your head. It's just that you're living through all this self-inflicted suffering that's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
unnecessary and anxiety, and you don't need to do those things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we really blow that thing out of
Yeah.
proportion. We're very
Yeah.
hyperbolic about those things,
Yeah.
right?
It's
Yeah.
a form of mind control, in my
Mhm.
opinion, because a lot of people that I have worked with over the years, they get waylaid by that. And in my opinion, it's like the overlords get to feed off of that anxiety.
Right.
They get to feed off of that little extra that they find so delicious, because they
Right.
are so, oh, they're so necrotic and just so
Yep.
I mean, I think about that, a lot. So I know for myself, I like to not give any extras in terms of any extraneous outputs. I like to be efficient in,
Hmm.
and so I think a lot of the pre-planning, like I journal, I make a lot of lists, I revise
Nice.
things. I I'm a mind mapper. It drives people insane. So I've got like my little mind map and everything is like, yeah, but that's what makes me feel like I feel like I am in charge of my reality, you know,
Right.
and I automatically apply the principles. Okay, does this match up? Is this in right alignment as a whole? You know,
Right.
I think it's
Absolutely.
important to ask those questions.
I agree. That's very critical. Yeah, it's all about aligning yourself, being upright, being in
Hmm.
alignment with natural law,
Yeah,
understanding your values and
yeah.
understanding principles, which are two
Mhm.
different things, really,
Yeah.
like setting boundaries that may be based off principles or setting boundaries that might be based off preference.
Mhm.
Those are
Yeah.
two different things, and people will get them like kind of confused, especially in
Yeah.
relationships, right? Like
Yeah.
boundaries with principles, that's really easy, at
Mhm.
least if you understand objective morality. Boundaries or preferences, well, those are more subjective. Like you can probably compromise on some of those. Maybe some of them you don't ever want
Mhm.
to like
Yeah. Yeah.
relieve that boundary,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's okay. Like that's for you to decide as an individual whether you want that boundary to stay there or not. And if anybody
Mhm.
crosses that, then that's that's
Yeah.
done. The agency of the transaction between us is over because you've crossed that boundary, you know. So yeah, I think that's really good. I'm gonna have to get off here
Yes.
here
Thank
soon
you
because
so much. I realize, holy moly, we have been at it for a while.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you so much for your time, for sharing your life, for sharing your gifts, your wisdom. We will have all of Brandon's information in the show notes below. And yeah, we'll need all your really cool links. Um, what's the best website? Is it Cubbyhole or no? No, you've got a bunch of other ones.
Yeah, people can find my work at seedtruth.com. That's seedtruth.com. That's where most of my work is at. I'm also on the Cubbyhole website as well, and then the One Great Work Network .com website. So you can find me there as well. And I'm all over YouTube, BitChute, Odyssey. You
Yay.
can find all those links from my Seed Truth website. And yeah, I just, like you talked about earlier, I just released that trailer. You can find that on YouTube. You can also find it through the Seed Truth website as well. I highly recommend people checking out the trailer. It's something I'm very proud of. I had a lot of fun making that, so I
It's
think people will
very,
enjoy that.
very cool, kids. Really
Yeah,
cool.
I know. Some people were like, "Man, you should be hired on by the History Channel at this point with that kind of
I saw
production."
that. I'm like, yeah, that would be good.
That would be
Hey,
good. Maybe
you
they'll learn
know,
something.
yeah, let's set some things straight here. So
Right, right.
thank you, Brandon Martin. Thank you so
Thank you so much as well.
much.
It's
All
been an
right.
honor to come on here. Maybe I can come back in the future. Totally
Yes.
down to come talk about other
Yeah,
things,
yeah, we can talk about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So all right, my loves, that is it for now. And so until next time, here is to love, truth, and beauty. Bye bye for now.